Hello everybody, this is Kimberly with Second Nature Horsemanship. Just going to show you how to put on a Peruvian saddle and its tail piece. It can be a little confusing since there isn't any videos out there in English. We're going to start with the alpaca pad, the corona, and then a little sticky pad in between. I like to start this pad right behind the shoulder. With these horses, you want to start further back to give them as much shoulder room as possible. There you can see the alpaca pad. I use a little piece of like sticky thing that you would put in your utensil drawer to kind of keep the corona stuck to that alpaca pad and not slipping out from underneath, especially if your horse is a little plump like mine. Next, we're going to take the whole saddle. His is already set up with the tailpiece on it. If it is, I like to set the saddle back on top of their loin with the tailpiece hanging over the tail, which you'll see here in just a second. So here I'm going to just make sure everything's kind of out of the way, and I'm going to place it pretty much on top of his butt. So there it's sitting on top of his loin. I'm going to make sure everything's straightened out. That way I can slide this up easily by myself. These saddles weigh a ton, and when you're doing it by yourself, this is just the easiest way to do it alone. So there you can see it sitting on his loin, taking a little breather there because it's heavy. Here you can see the crooper that runs through the tailpiece. I'm going to slide that tailpiece all the way up to the saddle, take his whole tail and carefully run it through the crooper, making sure I have all of his hair, everything through that crooper, making sure nothing's going to pinch and that it is pushed up tight up against his tail so that it is not pinching, grabbing, pulling, or anything. These horses are sensitive and we do not need to give them a reason. Once it is tight, I'm going to use the tension and pull the saddle all the way up to the center of my corona pad, double checking that crooper there, making sure everything's centered. Pull it up snug. Yes, it is snug. And then I'm going to slide that tail piece down so that the two little silver pieces are right on the dimples of his butt. Once that's all situated, I'm going to go back to the front of my saddle, make sure it's centered over his back, make sure I tent the saddle pad a little bit, giving him some freedom there. Lay everything perfectly, pull his tail into the cage. Some people like to pull it in between the cage and the floor, but I like to put it inside the cage. His tail is just really heavy, so it would look awkward on the outside. And then once I have that all situated, I drop my cinch down. And the cinch on these saddles actually sits way further back than like a standard Western saddle. They should be almost mid-belly. I can probably put two hands in front of the cinch and his shoulder. That way there's no pinching going on because they have such arm action, or termino that they call it, swimmer's arm, where their arm goes outward and swings. You definitely do not want any pinching or rubbing in that area. So they're very careful about placing their cinch further back. I'm going to tie that. It looked like I was tying it really tight, but it's just a really sticky latigo for some reason. So I really have to work at it to get it snug enough. And he's just dramatic. So once I get that tied up, I'm going to make sure everything's centered. Lay my pelinera, which is that little fluffy pad, straight down. That just keeps the seat of the saddle clean. It keeps it kind of comfy. It's like a little squishy pad, which I had to trim because I have short legs. So now this is kind of everywhere is where it's supposed to be. Everything's kind of sitting correctly. Now I'm going to grab my stirrups. These kind of run through like English stirrups. There's two different styles. I have this longer style here. I have longer legs and I like to ride with a little bit longer stirrup. So the bigger keeper there is for the latigo, for the cinch, and the front keeper, which is pretty small, is for your stirrups. The two styles are that of one which kind of hangs down like an off billet, and then you connect your stirrup to it, and this one, which is more like an English, where you run your leathers through there and they're already connected to your stirrups. So it just kind of depends on which saddle or which style you have. There's 2 different types of stirrups. These ones are just regular tapaderos, and then I also have the wooden stirrups, and those are really, you know, for showing, and they're kind of heavy, so I like to just use the tapaderos for when I'm training. Here I'm just kind of showing you the retranca. It should sit above the hocks on the horse. These things are not to be trail ridden in. You know, if you're going to trail ride in a Peruvian saddle, usually just ride with the crupper and no tailpiece, unless you're in a very flat, very easy terrain with nothing to catch it on, because they can easily catch their legs on that. If they trip or fall, they could get a leg through it, and then you just have a disaster on your hands. I know it looks cool, but it is absolutely a lot of work, and it is dangerous. It's not something that you just slap on your horse one day and go, yep, I hope they handle it well. It takes a lot of time and preparation to get them accustomed to it, and you know, remember to be safe and have safe practices when training your horse to one of these. Just like a regular saddle, you still want these saddles to fit well. This saddle has a wide tree. My horse is clearly a little thick, so he needs a wider saddle. He's got big shoulders. So, you know, just make sure everything is fitting well, the horse is comfortable in it, and that they're happy with it. So as far as the tailpiece goes, it's the crupper runs through the tailpiece and they go together. There's 2 sets of holes on the crupper and the tailpiece. You might be on a different hole for each piece. Like he's a 1 on the crupper and a 3 on the tailpiece. So it just depends on your horse and what they are built like. As it runs through, you get your holes adjusted. You run it up from the bottom up through the ring, clip them, and then run them back down through the ring and through the decorative piece that holds the pieces together. If you don't have that, you can just tape them together too, but either way works. But each horse is going to be adjusted slightly different. So you really kind of do one at a time until you know where your horse sits, and then tape it and set it and leave it and forget it, because it is a pain in the butt to keep it going on and off every time. Hopefully this helps you guys saddle your Peruvian horses with a Peruvian saddle. If you have any extra questions, let me know in the comments and I'd be happy to address them for you.